Fernanda was sitting on a park bench, the sunlight filtering through the leaves of the trees, creating a play of shadows on the ground. She watched the people rushing by, each with their own destinies and concerns, and felt the weight of loneliness settle in her chest. The laughter of children playing in the distance, the murmur of couples in love, and the clinking of coffee cups from a nearby cafe were just echoes of a world that seemed increasingly distant from her. With her savings depleted and without a job, Fernanda felt like a boat adrift in a vast ocean of uncertainty. As he looked at his bank account on his cell phone, a lump formed in his throat. The balance was almost zero, and the bills were starting to pile up. Eviction was a real possibility, and the thought of losing the only place she called home terrified her. "How did I get to this point?" he thought, as a tear slid down his cheek. Desperation enveloped her like a dense, suffocating fog. Determined to find a way out, Fernanda took the eviction letter she had received days before, folding it carefully and putting it in her bag. "Tomorrow, I'm going to the job fair," she told herself, like a mantra that could give her life a new direction. "I can't give up now." She stood up from the bench, feeling the cool breeze from the park, and decided she needed to take action. The next day, Fernanda arrived at the job fair wearing a simple dress, which she had bought at a sale, and a folder with her resume. The space was filled with well-dressed people, all looking confident and prepared to impress. The feeling of displacement invaded her immediately. Fernanda felt like an intruder in a world that wasn't hers, where everyone seemed to have studied at the best universities and had experiences that she didn't have. Insecurity spread through her body, but she took a deep breath and decided she couldn't let it get her down. She walked through the booths, listening to conversations about technological innovations, software development, and digital marketing. Every word I heard felt like a painful reminder that I fell far short of what was expected in the job market. But then, something caught his eye, a bright, modern booth, with the name Innovatech in big, bright letters. Fernanda hesitated for a moment, but the hope of getting a job prompted her to approach. "Hello, can I help you?" asked a girl, smiling cordially. "I'm interested in a job opening," Fernanda replied, trying to hide her anxiety. "Of course. We are always looking for talent. Do you have experience in the technology field?" the woman asked, looking curiously at Fernanda's resume. "I have a little experience in customer service and worked on a digital marketing project in college," Fernanda said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I'm willing to learn." The girl at the table looked at Fernanda with a mix of empathy and consideration. "I understand. Innovatech is a dynamic company, and we value determination. How about you sign up for an interview? We have some open positions." Fernanda felt a thread of hope light up inside her. "Yes, I'd love to." She hurriedly filled out the application form, her heart pounding. When he finished, the woman handed him a card with the date and time of the interview. "Good luck, Fernanda. We hope to see you soon." "Thanks." Fernanda smiled, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. She knew this could be her last chance. The night before the interview, Fernanda couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking of all the questions that could be asked and how she should answer. Nervousness consumed her, and insecurity made her imagine the worst. What if I'm not good enough? What if I stutter? What if? The questions multiplied in his mind like shadows, and with each one that appeared, his confidence diminished. On the day of the interview, Fernanda carefully chose her outfit, opting for a blouse that gave her confidence and elegant pants. Arriving at Innovatech, she was impressed by the grandeur of the building, whose glass windows reflected the blue sky and the entrance was decorated with green plants. She entered determinedly, taking a deep breath before being led to a modern room full of advanced technology. Sitting and waiting for the interviewer, Fernanda noticed a framed photo that froze her heart. It was a gala event, and in the center was Raphael, her ex-boyfriend whose memory still hurt deeply. As she digested her surprise, the door opened and Raphael walked in, immediately recognizing her with a nervous smile, making her oscillate between relief and panic. "Clear." His voice was familiar, but the tone was filled with a strange tension. "Hi, Raphael," she replied, trying to maintain her composure as her mind swirled with memories of the past. It was as if no time had passed, but the pain he felt was very real. "Let's start the interview," he said, but Fernanda realized that his words were loaded with a subtext that they both seemed to understand. The tension in the air was palpable, and every question Raphael asked seemed to bring up emotions that Fernanda had tried to bury. She struggled to answer clearly, her heart pounding as she tried to focus on the qualifications he was asking about. "You mentioned that you worked on a marketing project in college. Can you tell me more about that?" he asked, looking into her eyes. Fernanda took a deep breath, trying to forget the past. "Yes, it was a project on digital marketing strategies for small businesses. I worked in a group and we managed to develop a campaign that had a good return," he replied, his voice gaining a little more firmness. "That's great. Innovatech always looks for young people who have this desire to learn and develop," Raphael said, his gaze fixed on Fernanda. She felt butterflies in her stomach, unable to stop past memories from emerging like ghosts. The interview continued, but the atmosphere was full of unresolved feelings. Fernanda tried to concentrate on her answers, but Raphael's every word reminded her of the love they had shared and the pain she had felt when he left her without explanations. The idea that he was now in a position of power, assessing his capabilities, was almost unbearable. When the interview came to an end, Raphael stood up and, with a restrained smile, said, "It was a pleasure meeting you, Fernanda. I will consider your candidacy and will be in touch shortly." "Thank you for the opportunity," Fernanda murmured, her voice barely audible as she stood up. Feeling the adrenaline flowing through her veins and her mind plagued by questions about the meaning of that reunion, she took one last look at Raphael before leaving the room. Waiting anxiously in the Innovatech corridor, Fernanda tried to control the anxiety that pulsed in her chest. The modernity of the room, with its glass walls and boldly designed furniture, couldn't distract her. His focus was on getting the job and, above all, stabilizing his financial life, recognizing that reuniting with the past could be an opportunity to start over. When they finally heard her name, she stood up, took a deep breath and walked through the door. The room was even more impressive from the inside. In the center, a large table made of light wood contrasted with the black chairs. Fernanda noticed a picture on the wall, a photo from a company gala event, where well-dressed people were smiling and having fun. A man's face stood out among the others, and a chill ran down her spine as she recognized Raphael, her ex-boyfriend. The memory of that magical night of the two of them together, dancing under the bright lights, took over his mind. "Good afternoon, Fernanda. Please sit down," a deep, familiar voice said, bringing her back to reality. The man standing before her was Raphael, now more mature, with dark, slightly graying hair and a look that exuded confidence. He was sitting behind the desk, and his smile was both warm and distant. "Hi, good afternoon," Fernanda replied, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. She sat down, her hands clasping nervously in her lap. "Let's start. You have an impressive resume," Raphael said, as he began to leaf through the papers on the table. The silence that followed was palpable. Fernanda felt her heart accelerate, memories of the past invading her mind like a whirlwind. What was he thinking? Did he recognize her? There was a spark of emotion in his eyes, but Fernanda didn't know if it was just her imagination. "Thank you," she murmured, forcing herself to stay focused on the interview. "I'm really excited about the possibility of working here. Innovatech is an incredible company." "Yes, we strive to be innovative and work with the best people," Raphael replied, raising his gaze and fixing it in Fernanda's direction. "Tell me a little about your previous experience." Fernanda began to describe her skills and experiences, but her words came out unfocused, as if a fog had settled in her mind. Raphael's gaze paralyzed her. He listened to her attentively, but what disturbed her most was the way he observed her, as if he were seeking something beyond his qualifications. "And why did you decide to leave your last job?" he asked, breaking the tense silence that had formed. Fernanda hesitated, the question taking her by surprise. The truth was that she had been fired and didn't want to expose her vulnerability. Fernanda responded, trying to hide her insecurity. I was in a position where opportunities for growth were limited. I want to work in a place that values innovation and creativity, and I think Innovatech is the right place for me. Raphael watched her closely, evaluating her words before asking, I understand. And do you have any ideas on how you can contribute to our team? Fernanda took a deep breath again. Yes, I have some ideas about how we can improve interaction between teams and optimize some processes. I believe that communication is essential for innovation. Raphael nodded, encouraging her to continue. That is great. And where did you get these ideas from? The question was simple, but for Fernanda, it was like an invitation to open the doors of her heart. I have always believed that the best ideas come from collaboration. I believe we can learn from each other and build something greater together, he said, feeling a little more confident. Raphael smiled, and for a brief moment, Fernanda had the impression that he was genuinely interested in what she had to say. You seem to have a clear view on this. That's admirable, Raphael commented, his tone softer. Fernanda looked away, feeling the intensity of that moment. It was as if time had stopped, and everything around them disappeared except the two of them. Thank you, she replied, feeling the tension float in the air. The two shared a silence filled with unspoken emotions, and Fernanda found herself thinking about how her life could have been different if things had taken a different turn. Raphael, who was once her love, now stood before her in a scenario she had never imagined. The interview continued, but Fernanda had the feeling that each question was just a formality. Raphael's words echoed in his head. In the end, he stood up, and Fernanda prepared herself for what could be the end of that meeting. Fernanda, I wanted to thank you for coming. You have a very interesting profile, and we are definitely considering you for the position, Raphael said, with a smile that seemed to mix professionalism and a spark of something more. Thank you for the opportunity, Raphael. I'm really excited about the possibility, Fernanda replied, still stunned. Can we meet again in the next few days to discuss next steps? He suggested. Of course, I'll be waiting for your answer, she said, trying to maintain her composure even though her heart was about to explode. When the interview came to an end and Fernanda said goodbye, a whirlwind of feelings took over her. When leaving Innovatech, the sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink. She walked through the busy streets of the city, feeling lost in a sea of thoughts. Raphael was an important part of her past, and now he had returned in a way she could never have imagined. How could she move on? How could she accept that the man who had left without explanation was now before her, not just as a memory, but as a possibility of a new beginning? Fernanda's mind was buzzing with questions, but one thing was certain. That encounter would change her life in ways she still couldn't understand. Life had a strange way of bringing back the past, and now, faced with her uncertain future, she wondered if she was ready to face what was to come. Fernanda was paralyzed. Innovatech's modern room, full of technology and innovation, seemed to spin around her as the weight of memories hit her like a blow. Raphael, her ex-boyfriend, who had left her years ago without an explanation, was now the man evaluating her for an internship. Her heart was beating wildly, and breathing became increasingly difficult. What was he doing there? What was life trying to tell you? Clear. Raphael's voice interrupted his confused thoughts. He watched her with an expression that mixed curiosity and a slight smile. Can you tell me more about your past experiences? She forced herself to smile, even though the gesture seemed like a monumental effort. Of course, I worked as an administrative assistant at a marketing company, and I also had a brief experience as a freelancer in graphic design. Her voice shook, and the words came out in a rush, as if she wanted to quickly end the torture of the moment. Interesting. Raphael shook his head, taking notes on a clipboard. Memories of simpler times stirred in his mind. He and Fernanda used to spend hours talking about their aspirations. She dreamed of being a recognized designer, while he wanted to make a difference in the world of technology. Now, seeing that dream and those familiar eyes before him awakened a mixture of nostalgia and regret. "Are you still involved in design?" Raphael asked, keeping his gaze fixed on her eyes. There was an intensity in his gaze that Fernanda couldn't ignore. "Yes, but not as I would like." Fernanda hesitated, remembering the difficulties she had faced recently. "I tried, but things didn't go as I planned." "I understand." Raphael's voice was soft, almost as if he was trying to comfort her. "The market is difficult, especially for those just starting out." He paused, allowing silence to take over the space as the surrounding environment seemed to dissolve. I never imagined you would be here, at Innovatech." His words were a direct blow to Fernanda's heart, as if he had the power to relive everything he had felt years ago. "I didn't think so either," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "Not even when I decided to run for office." "Why did you decide to run for office? What brought you here?" Raphael's tone was inquisitive, but there was a hidden vulnerability in his question that Fernanda couldn't ignore. Fernanda hesitated before revealing, "I was desperate. After losing my job, I saw few options and thought Innovatech could be a chance to start over." Raphael observed her deeply, touching on the sensitivity of the moment. Starting over is powerful. We all need a second chance sometimes. Fernanda, still searching for answers about the past, asked with obvious pain, "Raphael, why did you leave without explanation?" There was a charged silence as he struggled with his memories before admitting, "I didn't want to hurt you, it was the opposite. I struggled with family pressures and expectations. I didn't know how to cope and ended up running away." Fernanda, her heart sinking at his sincerity, replied, "You should have told me. I deserved to know." "You were right," he admitted, guilt evident in his eyes. "And I'm sorry. I should have been more honest with you." The mood in the room seemed to change, as if time had stopped as they stared at each other. Fernanda realized that although the past still hurt her, there was something bigger at play now. The opportunity to start over was not just about the job, but also about the possibility of understanding your past and moving forward. "Raphael," she began, "I don't know if I'm ready to work with you. The idea of having you around, it's complicated." "I understand," he said, his voice low and steady. "But I want you to know that regardless of what happened between us, I would like to help you. If you decide to accept this position, I promise to do everything I can to support you." His proposal took her by surprise. A temporary internship? A new professional start, even with a man who had hurt her heart? Fernanda looked at him, gauging the sincerity in his eyes. "What if I don't make it? What if I'm not good enough?" "You're more than good enough, Fernanda." Raphael's words were firm, and Fernanda felt a warmth spread inside her. "I saw your potential. You have a determination that few others have, and that's what really matters." She bit her lip, fighting the rising emotions. "What if I can't deal with you and the past at the same time?" "We can do this together," he suggested, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "We can get through this, one day at a time." Fernanda took a deep breath, feeling torn. The desire to start over was strong, but the fear of reliving old wounds paralyzed her. "I need some time to think," she finally said, her voice shaky. "Of course," Raphael replied with a nod. "I'll be here, waiting for your decision." As Fernanda left the room, her mind was a storm of emotions. The future seemed uncertain, but the possibility of a new beginning, both professional and personal, pulsed like a light on the horizon. After all, perhaps what really mattered was not just what had happened between them in the past, but what could still happen. Fernanda took a deep breath when joining Innovatech for the first time as an intern. The modern, vibrant atmosphere of the office, with its glass walls and state-of-the-art equipment, left her a little intimidated but also excited. The morning sun filtered through the windows, illuminating every corner of the space that pulsed with innovation. She could hardly believe that she had gotten an internship at the technology company she had always admired, but at the same time, the idea of having to work alongside Raphael, her ex-boyfriend, made her nervous. In the first few days, Fernanda dedicated herself body and soul to learning everything she could. The passion she always had for technology was rekindled, and she found herself immersed in challenging projects and stimulating discussions. Raphael watched her from afar, and Fernanda noticed his intense gaze at unexpected moments. He seemed to admire her determination and intelligence, but with each smile they exchanged, Fernanda felt a mix of joy and anxiety. The past still hung between them like a shadow, and she wondered if he still had feelings for her or if everything was just a distant echo. "You're doing great, Fernanda," Raphael said one day, while she was analyzing a presentation on the computer. His voice was soft, and Fernanda felt butterflies in her stomach. "The team really appreciates your ideas." "Thank you, Raphael. I'm just trying to keep up," Fernanda replied, trying to maintain her composure. But his mind was full of unresolved memories and emotions. The meetings began to become an environment where Fernanda felt increasingly comfortable. She presented her ideas, and Raphael often supported her, praising her work in front of others. It was a strange game, the professional she had become and the woman who still carried the scars of a lost love. In one of these meetings, Fernanda noticed that Raphael was watching her with a different look, as if he was evaluating something deeper. She looked away, afraid that her feelings would betray her. During a coffee break, with her colleagues dispersed, Fernanda was alone in the kitchen until Sophia, an old friend of Raphael's with brown hair and bright eyes, came in with a cup of coffee. "Fernanda, it's great to see you. Are you at Innovatech now? That's amazing," Sophia exclaimed with a warm smile. "Yes, I'm interning," Fernanda replied, keeping the conversation light. "And how are you?" "Well, thank you. Raphael always talks about you. He was very happy when he found out you were hired," Sophia revealed, giving her a knowing look. The mention of Raphael made Fernanda's heart race, intensifying her mixed feelings about the reunion. "Does he talk about me?" he asked, trying to hide his curiosity. "Yes, he always had a special affection for you. You know, actually, I think he never fully got over what happened between you," Sophia said, with a soft tone of voice. Fernanda felt butterflies in her stomach. "What do you mean by that?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, looking around as if to make sure no one was listening. "Look, I don't know all the details, but I can tell you that separating from him was very difficult. He had his reasons, and it wasn't something he wanted. Family pressure, you know how it is," Sophia sighed, as if she was weighing her words. Fernanda felt a wave of confusion. Sophia's words echoed in her mind, like a mystery she didn't know how to solve. What did Raphael keep? Why did he leave her without explanation? "I did not know that." Fernanda forced a smile, trying to maintain her composure, but her heart was pounding. "Thanks for telling me, Sophia. I don't want you to think I'm intruding, I just thought you should know. Sometimes people do things that we don't fully understand." Sophia took a sip of coffee, looking directly into Fernanda's eyes. "And, who knows, you might give Raphael a chance to explain." Fernanda felt overcome by a whirlwind of emotions. The idea that Raphael might have his reasons for leaving her enveloped her in a mix of hope and fear. She didn't know if she was ready to face the past, but she also couldn't ignore that there was still something between them. In the days that followed, Fernanda became more confident in her work. The meetings became moments of collaboration and discovery, and she began to impress not just Raphael, but the entire team. Each achievement, however, was accompanied by a shadow, uncertainty about what Raphael really felt for her and whether he was willing to open his heart. In a particularly intense moment during a meeting, Fernanda presented a new strategy for a project that was in progress. Raphael praised her in front of everyone, and she could see the pride in his eyes. "Fernanda, you really outdid yourself. This idea could take our project to another level," said Raphael, his voice full of enthusiasm. Fernanda's heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but smile. "Thank you, Raphael. I'm glad you liked it." She looked at him, and for a brief moment, the world around her disappeared. "You're a force to be reckoned with here, Fernanda. Don't forget that," he added, with a tone of sincerity that made her feel valued. In the following days, Fernanda found herself thinking more and more about Raphael. The conversations they had during coffee breaks were filled with a subtle tension, as if something was about to boil over. It was hard to ignore the chemistry that still existed between them, but the past still hung like a dark cloud, and Fernanda didn't know how to approach it. One afternoon, after a meeting, Fernanda decided that she needed a frank conversation. He sat at one of the office tables, his heart beating fast. Raphael approached, noticing that she was thoughtful. "Is everything okay, Fernanda? You seem distant," he asked, concern in his eyes. "Actually, I'd like to talk about us. About what happened in the past," Fernanda said, her voice firm, but her heart racing. Raphael hesitated for a moment, and Fernanda saw a shadow of sadness pass over his face. I don't know if this is the right time." He looked down, as if trying to find the right words. "But I need to know, Raphael. What happened between us? Why did you leave me without explanations?" Fernanda felt the urgency in his voice, and the pressure of all those emotions she had kept inside for so long. Raphael looked her in the eyes, and Fernanda could see the internal struggle he was facing. "Fernanda, he began, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. And it was at that moment, when the tension between them grew, that Fernanda realized that the past wasn't so distant after all. The answers she was searching for were about to be revealed, but what would that mean for their future? Fernanda felt more confident with each day she spent at Innovatech. The first few weeks of her internship were challenging, but she quickly stood out, exceeding her team's expectations and earning the admiration of her colleagues and, especially, Raphael. However, even with his professional success, the shadow of the past hung over his achievements. Every compliment she received reminded her of what she had lost, Raphael's love and the pain of separation. One night, the company organized a get-together to celebrate the quarter's good results. Fernanda groomed herself carefully, wearing an elegant blue dress that accentuated her curves and gave her an aura of confidence. Upon entering the environment lit by soft lights, the surrounding music and the laughter of her colleagues welcomed her. She felt a little out of place, but when she saw Raphael in a corner, talking to a group of executives, her heart skipped a beat. He still attracted her as before, but there was something different about the way he looked at her now. "Clear. You came." Raphael approached. His smile was contagious. "I'm glad to see you here. I couldn't miss this party, right?" Fernanda tried to smile, but her voice had a nervous tone. "I think I'm doing well in the internship." "You're doing better than fine." His presentation about the project was excellent. He praised her, and Fernanda felt heat rise to her face. As the night progressed, they mingled with their classmates, laughing and sharing stories. Fernanda allowed herself to relax, forgetting for a moment the wounds of the past. But in a moment of vulnerability, while they were away from the noise, Raphael pulled her to a more private corner. "Fernanda, can I talk to you for a moment?" He looked more serious now, and the smile that had once lit up his face was waning. "Clear." Fernanda felt butterflies in her stomach, as if she were about to enter a classroom with a stern teacher. I've been thinking about us a lot," Raphael began, hesitating. "About how things ended." "About this?" "Raphael, it's been years. What else to say?" Fernanda crossed her arms, trying to protect herself from what could come. "I know I wasn't fair to you. I should have explained better, but it was difficult. I was stuck in a sticky situation." He looked at the ground. His expression carried a weight that Fernanda hadn't expected. Complicated? You left without a word. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. Fernanda's voice was shaking, but she struggled to maintain her composure. I did not want to hurt you. I was being pressured by my family. They never accepted our relationship, and I didn't know how to deal with it all. Raphael explained, his voice carrying quiet desperation. So you decided to leave me? Was that it? Fernanda was hurt, and the old pain resurfaced with force. You didn't give me the chance to choose. Raphael took a deep breath, seeming to search for the right words. I know I made a mistake. And I'm sorry. I should have fought for us. I have always loved you, Fernanda. And I still love it. Fernanda felt a mixture of relief and confusion. His words were a balm for her wounds, but at the same time they left her more lost. Love is not enough, Raphael. What you did was leave me alone at a time when I needed you most. I know, and it eats me up inside. But I'm here now. I can try to correct my mistakes if you let me. The sincerity in his eyes made Fernanda hesitate. To correct? As Fernanda asked, her voice softening. You can't just erase what happened. I'm not trying to erase it, but I want you to know that I'm here, willing to fight for you. If you give me a chance. Raphael took a step forward, his gaze intense and hopeful. The music in the background seemed distant, and Fernanda felt her heart pound. Memories of the past mixed with the reality of the present. What if I can't trust you again? She questioned, unsure. I respect your doubts, Fernanda. But I want you to know that I'm willing to open up and be transparent with you. I don't want any more secrets between us. He spoke with a fervor that almost convinced her. I need time, Fernanda said, feeling like she needed to get her thoughts in order. I can't just forget everything that happened. Raphael, in a sincere and vulnerable voice, said to Fernanda, I understand and I will wait as long as I need, but please don't close the door on me. I don't want to lose you again. The conversation was interrupted by colleagues who arrived with laughter and champagne to toast, and while Raphael joined them, Fernanda walked away, feeling overwhelmed. She sat on a couch, watching him laugh with the others, which inflamed her heart with a mixture of love and pain. Are you well? Asked Marissa, a friend from work, noticing Fernanda's internal struggle. I'm just thinking, Fernanda replied, her mind still tangled up in Raphael's words and presence. Marissa, with visible concern, commented, It feels like you're in an emotional maze. Raphael, we are talking about the past, about what happened between us. Fernanda hesitated, not knowing if she should share more. This is complicated. Do you still like him? Marissa asked directly. I don't know. I want to believe so, but at the same time, the pain is still fresh. Fernanda sighed, feeling the weight of tears in her eyes. If he really cares, he will fight for you. But you need to be honest with yourself. What do you really want? Marissa touched on a crucial point, and Fernanda realized that, deep down, she still wanted a future with Raphael. After a few minutes of conversation, Fernanda decided that she needed to face Raphael again. The music still echoed through the room, but now it was a backdrop to the new determination growing within her. She knew she couldn't keep running from the past. It was time to seek the truth and find a path that would lead to healing, whether with Raphael or without him. When Fernanda approached Raphael again, he saw her and immediately smiled, as if there was no one else around. Claire, I was waiting for you to come back. We need to talk, Raphael. We need to be honest with each other. Fernanda said, her voice firm and determined. Sure, let's find a quieter place. He responded, and together they walked away from the party, with Fernanda's heart beating strong, ready to face the ghosts that still haunted her. Fernanda was in a state of alert, her heart racing as she watched Raphael, who seemed unable to find the right words to explain his past. The Innovatech room, with its glass walls and cutting-edge technology, now seemed like a maze of emotions. She felt like the walls were closing in, and the pressure of an uncertain future was suffocating her. The environment, once dynamic and promising, now pulsed with tension between them. "Fernanda, Raphael began, but his voice trailed off, as if the confession he so desperately wanted to make was stuck in his throat. She watched her hands twitch nervously, an attempt to maintain her composure as her mind swirled with memories she would rather forget. "Do you have something to tell me, Raphael?" Fernanda asked. Her voice was firmer than she felt. Determination was building within her, a flame that burned to dispel the confusion and pain the past had left. "It's complicated," Raphael began, his sincerity evident. "When I left, it wasn't for lack of love. I was under pressure from my family, who never accepted our relationship." Fernanda, overcome by conflicting emotions, felt both the pain of rejection and anger and disillusionment emerge. "So, you left me for them? Didn't you have the courage to fight for us?" she challenged, her words sharp. Raphael, seeking courage, admitted, "I was younger and I let fear dominate. But I also didn't want you to feel guilty for problems that were mine." The tension was interrupted by a director who abruptly entered, saying, "Raphael, we need you. The situation is critical." With promises of future explanations, Raphael followed the director. Fernanda, alone and worried, realized that bigger problems awaited. In the center of a tense meeting room, Raphael tried to allay concerns about impending cuts, while Fernanda, watching from the doorway, felt ready to step in and help. She felt an idea sprout in her mind, a solution that could change the course of things. If she could find the way to put this idea into practice, perhaps she could not only save her job, but also help save the company Raphael loved so much. Fernanda took a deep breath, deciding to insert herself in that moment. "Sorry to interrupt, but I have a suggestion," Fernanda said, entering the room. Everyone turned to her, surprise written all over their faces. Raphael looked at her with a mix of admiration and concern. "Fernanda, now is not the time," he began, but she was in no mood to back down. "I know the situation is critical, but we can innovate. The market is changing, and we can pioneer a new approach. How about a service platform that meets the public's emerging needs during this crisis? We can use technology that we already have to help small businesses connect with customers online," Fernanda explained, her words flowing with the passion she felt for her idea. The directors began to murmur among themselves, surprised by the audacious proposal. Raphael watched her, his gaze full of pride and a little fear. He knew the situation was risky, but he also understood that Fernanda's passion could be the key to the company's salvation. "That's risky, Fernanda," one of the directors said, shaking his head. "What if it doesn't work?" "But what if it works? We can recover what we lost and even help others in the process," Fernanda insisted, her voice strong and clear. "We need to be bold, and I'm willing to work on that. I'm here to help Innovatech reinvent itself." Raphael felt a wave of emotions when he heard Fernanda speak like that. He knew that this was the woman he always loved, the woman who had the strength to fight until the end. "I support her idea," he declared, and the room fell silent. "If Fernanda is willing to take a risk, I will take a risk too. We need people who believe in innovation, and she is one of them." One by one, the directors began to nod their heads, recognizing Fernanda's determination and Raphael's leadership. The mood was changing, and hope began to flow again. "It's decided," the older director finally said. "Let's give Fernanda's idea a chance. Let's work together and see what we can do." At the end of the meeting, Fernanda felt adrenaline pumping through her veins. She had stood up at the right time, and now Innovatech had a new direction. But more importantly, she had reconnected with Raphael, and the possibility of a future together was closer than ever. "Fernanda," Raphael called her as everyone started to leave. She turned to him, her heart pounding. "You were amazing in there. I don't know what I would do without you." "You don't have to do this alone, Raphael. We're in this together now," Fernanda responded, the warmth of her words reflecting the new hope that was beginning to blossom between them. "You're still the woman I've always admired," he said, his eyes boring into hers. "And I want you to know that my decision to leave was never about you. I was just trying to protect what we had. But now I'm here for you. So let's build something new together," Fernanda said, a smile lighting up her face. The past was still there, but now there was room for a future where they could rewrite their stories, side by side. Did you enjoy today's story? Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and hit the bell to not miss our upcoming stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.